Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this edition of AACRAO's Credential Chats. We are joined this episode by one of our first repeat visitors. We have Deb Everhart. She is the Chief Strategy Officer at Credential Engine. Deb, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, happy to be here.
Deb, you at Credential Engine, your newsletter is called Credential Transparency. If people are not already subscribed, it's a great, newsletter that is not at all spammy in your inbox. And so, when people just, by way of introduction of just you and your work at Credential Engine, what is it about that Credential Engine is doing, and what is it about transparency that is, sort of just the North Star for you?
Yeah, sure. So we're a nonprofit and credential and skill transparency, it's our mission. It's right in our mission statement. And it goes right along with our vision, which is that everyone can have clear and consistent information about credentials and skills and jobs so they can make those connections.
And I think that is just such a eloquent, explanation of it. And I think that a place where there is, credential confusion that kind of is overlap between what Credential Engine does and what credential issuers are doing. And my guess is that something that Credential Engine would love to make clear is that you are not competition to anybody's credential issuing software.
Yeah, no, and that's a good segue to just say a word about what we do and what we don't do, because what we don't do is we don't issue credentials. Credential Engine is all about credential and skill and job data. And so we provide two open technologies. One is a schema, it's the credential transparency description language that provides a data structure for describing all different types of credentials. So that's diplomas, degrees, certificates, micro-credentials, badges, licenses, apprenticeships, as well as all the things that you need to know about in order to make sense of credentials. What courses are in them? What skills are in them? What quality assurance do they have? Who are the organizations that issue them? What jobs do they prepare you for? What are the pathways to get to those jobs? So that CTDL is the data structure that makes all of that data clear and consistent. And then the registry, the credential registry, is a repository where anyone who has that data can publish the data to the registry as linked open data that makes those connections that are useful for people. So we focus on the data. Think of it sort of like the data plumbing. And other people build the applications and the tools that help people use that data, and particularly to include it in the credentials that are issued. But we don't issue the credentials and we don't handle any personally identifiable information.
Right. At the end of the day, it is about adding transparency in a format that can be, read, whether it's on, with regardless of which vendor you use, that is about transparency into what credentials are credential lean.
Yeah,
And I guess as well as other information too, such as if there's advising resources available and
right.
financial aid and outcomes data and just ha having all of this in a standardized format so that people can make meaning of credentials. And I guess that's probably a good segue for us, Deb, to the Counting Credentials 2025 report from Credential Engine. This is the first update to this report in 3 years and since the 2022 report. And I mean, some really exciting data to share in this report. I think for me, one of the top level things is 1.8 million different credentials that are being counted. What's in the report? Yeah, I guess just if you want to introduce the report and just what are you excited to share with people and for them to notice in the report?
Yeah, sure. So, um, back to Credential Engine's mission, I talked about our technologies. The other key thing we do is policy and advocacy. And so we do policy work at all levels, federal, state, regional, local, even, institutional policies in terms of what are what are kind of the local rules for making data transparent. So we advocate for all of that. Um, And then part of our advocacy for credential transparency is, well, what are all the credentials that are in the US, right? And so that's why we do this research. This is a massive body of research. This is the fifth time this report has come out. It took over a year to put it all together with a team of experts and an expert advisory panel. And the report actually has three parts. One, it counts credentials. So across all of the educational and occupational credentials that are offered in the US, it counts 1.8 million credentials that are offered in the US from over 134,000 different providers. And then the second part of the report is an analysis of expenditures. $2.34 million, I'm sorry, trillion, $2.34 trillion are spent on education and training in the US annually. That's a pretty giant number. And the third part of the report is new this year. It's called In Context. So it's counting credentials in context, and it's a whole additional report that talks about digital credentials and why they're important and contextualizes those numbers and that research. Because, I mean, what does that really mean? 1.8 million credentials and $2.34 trillion. Yeah, I think we need some transparency to make sense of that, right?
Absolutely. And I guess that also is a good opportunity for us, when we look at these numbers, things that we want to get excited about, and also things we want to be a little bit cautious about, such as comparing apples to apples from previous reports, that the methodology has shifted a little bit. And so when the previous reports where we were really excited to surpass 1 million credentials, that 1.8 does not necessarily mean that we've almost doubled.
That's right. And so the difference between the last count of a little over 1 million credentials and this count of 1.8 million does not mean that credentials have grown by 800,000 in the last couple of years. Um, every single time we've done this report, we have enhanced the research. And now, as you can imagine, we were able to improve the research this time around using AI. And the thing we did that I found personally really exciting was we did a very extensive analysis of badges. So we got a lot more data from badge platform providers that are actually a big part of the change in that count. And we got actual badge data from providers to be able to analyze what's in those badges and all the huge variety of amazing things that are being recognized by badges.
And I think that's just so cool. And you know what, we probably should have mentioned since that brought up the advocacy piece that back on December 10th of 2025, there was actually the first ever congressional hearing on LERs, learning and employment records, which
Mhm.
people who watch Credential Chats will definitely hopefully be familiar with. And Deb's colleague Scott Cheney, the CEO of Credential Engine, testified, as well as Alex Kaplan, and who is currently consulting with AACRAO actually testified. So this stuff is, you know, partly advocacy and partly kind of having a moment, I guess we could say, Deb.
Yeah. Advocacy pays off, right?
Well,
Noah, you and I have been we've been in the open badges movement since the very beginning, and we've seen it grow, and we always believed in making all learning count. And now, it's becoming an imperative on so many fronts. Um, businesses, employers, education providers, training providers, and most importantly, the people who have earned these credentials deserve and should be demanding having a clear and consistent information about what they learn, what the skills are, and how they can use that to pursue opportunities.
and I think something that you've always been really clear on is that like that's not a yes. to employment opportunities. And that is not the exclusive sort of purview of this kind of data. And,
Mhm.
you know, the report definitely, I think, at least one of my takeaways is it definitely hints at using this data, right? This is not just data that we're,
Mhm.
you know, digitally stapling on to our digital badges and digital credentials, but rather this is data that we can be operationalizing. And, you know, when you think of just stuff that you'd like to see, you know, especially for ACRA members, right? In maybe before going to the registrar office, thinking about enrollment management professionals, you know, where do you see, you know, in a really just fully beautifully manifested LER ecosystem that some of this kind of credential transparency work is showing up in the world of folks who spend every day working in enrollment management. How's that going to look in your mind?
Um, yes. Well, in the world of enrollment management, having clear and consistent information is part of how we can all do a better job of recognizing prior learning and transferring credits. And also, I think and this is in the in context report. Um, One of the calls to action in the report is make all learning count, right? So we've got counting credentials, 1.8, counted them, and then turning that into action. Let's make all learning count. And part of how we do that is we understand what the learning is,
Mm.
particularly if we can see what the skills are, right? So from the minute a person comes into a higher ed institution, um, hopefully some of their learning can come with them and help them make progress toward that credential they're seeking, whether it's a certificate or a degree, um, and help them start earning credentials as they complete courses, right? So, to actually have records of learning that include the skills and other important, transparent metadata about what was in that course issued to the person so that that learning counts all along the way.
Mm.
And then for registrars and others who are responsible for formally, officially recognizing that learning, to make sure that the credentials are issued so that they have the credential transparency description language data connected inside those digital credentials. I mean, we are just at the beginning of the massive opportunities that digital credentials hold for all of us. You can put a credential on the wall, right? That's great. And if you have a degree, you really want it to be on the wall. That's awesome. But a digital credential, it can say, okay, this person's not qualified for this job. Oh, this person really should be further along in their degree progress. Let's give them credit. Oh, this person has these skills that are applicable so they can be a mentor. These are all things that a digital credential can unlock, especially now with AI capabilities to help us do that. So let's do that.
And do you foresee also, and with not just at the individual level, but at the credential level, that if I see, you know, if I'm a learner looking for what's next in my, you know, life-wide learning and working journey, and I see a credential that has a lot of this data from, you know, a university, for example, that it might actually be a competitive advantage for is an enrollment management strategy
Oh,
because
yeah.
just helping me as an informed consumer who's shopping around for where I want to do my learning, that data is going to be that when we talk about how do we operationalize this data, how do we use this data, that one of the ways it might be used is by, you know, reaching me and helping me make a more informed decision.
Right. We are about this close, maybe this close to AI tools being able to help people with that kind of decision making about where they're going to go to school. How much transfer value am I going to get? Is this program that I'm going to enroll in actually aligned with the career area that I want? Does this institution recognize the skills that are in the courses and credentials and military experience and community service that I've already done? So institutions can have the tools to do this to help with enrollment and attracting people to their institutions. Or they can let someone else do it and it may or may not turn out the way they wanted it to, quite frankly. I don't
I
mean
know.
that to sound negative, but you know, AI is changing things just so much faster than most people realize.
Yeah, I think it's an invitation, a
Yes.
provocative one, but
It's
definitely an
not a threat, it's an
invitation.
invitation. It's a call to action.
Deb Everhart, Chief Strategy Officer at Credential Engine, thank you so much for rejoining us. It sounds like we'll definitely in our show notes try to include links to the report as well as to that contextualizing supplementary report that you described. And it sounds like one of the exciting things is this report telling us about the credential present while really sort of previewing, like you said, where we're going for the not too distant credential future.
Absolutely. So happy to talk to you today, Noah. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to share with us here at AACRAO Credential Chats, and we wish you a badge worthy week, everybody. So long.
Thank you.